Hi everyone. I'm Ritesh, part of the customer success team. In 2021 and 2022, I had the pleasure of working on an engagement with a prominent Swedish retailer, and we did rollout of the enterprise risk and compliance modules, the products that we have. So I have some learnings from that session and those 2 years. So I just thought it would be useful, especially for people. I know me and Patrick are here. If it's useful to you as well in your journey and how to plan for it. So just a quick show of hands. If anybody just starting with the engagement, I know both of you are. Okay, perfect. So I hope this is useful then. Perfect. So I'll some quick introductions on what the customer is about. So they're a $40 billion USD company. They are into three major businesses. Retail and shopping centers are some of their key areas. And then they have around 400 stores across 30 odd markets. Some of their Northern Europe, Western Europe is where they started in. They have stores now across the world, Russia, China. Some of the emerging markets are some of their key revenue streams now. And they are trying to go as digital. One of their objectives is to go as digital as they can. So this particular engagement was also to some extent driven by that objective. And on the right, we have the implementation itself. We have around 10,000 users over a 2-year time frame. We implemented the tool, both applications across 30 odd countries, 20 odd languages, 22 to be exact, and around 10 initiatives. When I say initiatives, in metric stream terms, these are 2 products, enterprise risk and compliance. But within that, for example, within compliance, within self-assessments, they rolled it out to financial controls, health, safety and security, anti-bribery and corruption, RVP, respiratory virus prevention. That was one of their key. The starting points was actually respiratory virus prevention, basically COVID controls. They had massive losses because stores couldn't open, especially in March and June of 2020. So one of the key drivers was that pandemic and how they could get their stores back open. It was not that they couldn't do it without metric stream, but they did it using Excel-based surveys and so on. So they didn't quite have that visibility, the cross-country visibility that they needed. A platform like metric stream allowed them to do that. Over a 3-month time frame, they rolled it out to around 30 plus countries. Now every single store of theirs, including a few in London and around, uses metric stream to do for 10 controls, they self-assess and confirm that they are compliant with crowd monitoring, crowd control, those kind of controls for respiratory virus prevention. So I'll talk about how that journey was in the slides coming up. I've split it up into a couple of different sections. One was to just give you a sense of how the implementation and rollout really was structured. And I'm taking an example of one of those initiatives. So I mentioned 10 initiatives in total. So what they did was first, of course, you need to have a finalized risk and compliance worksheet. Which objectives are driving this, which processes are linked to those, which risks are those that are linked to those processes, and which controls you're trying to assess. What are the 5 Ws of those controls? How are you going to collect the evidence? How are you going to store the evidence? All of that was documented in an RCW, in an Excel template. What that then allowed us to do is launch this product for each initiative into a pilot set of markets. When I say a pilot, around 3 to 5 countries where they rolled out the tool, that allowed them to get the feedback, the first line feedback that Simon and some of the other panelists were talking about earlier today. They got that feedback. The pilot allowed them to also understand from a metric stream standpoint, and that's the visibility I got, what needs to change in the tool in terms of reporting, in terms of ease of use, user experience, basically. And then that allowed them to roll it out to markets across the world. They did it in 3 phases or 3 months. Each month you had multiple countries going live. The decision factors to define which those countries or markets needed to be included was how enthusiastic they are, how open to change they are, what it meant in terms of their current maturity versus where they want to be, and so on. So multiple factors which allowed them to basically nominate themselves and say, I want to be in wave 1, wave 2, or wave 3. And what it also allowed us to do is get feedback with every wave, tune the product a little more, a little better with every release. From a metric stream point of view, we continuously, every month, had a set of changes, reporting changes, user experience items, and so on. So that allowed us to keep improving with each wave, which they percolated to each of those markets via drop-in sessions, frequently asked questions, training sessions for each of those markets. So a typical 1 month meant first 15 days you had people trying out the tool hands-on. Then there was a training session where we asked if they had any questions. We gave them breakout rooms and so on. So I'll talk about all that as well. But essentially, this is a template that they seem to use across all the initiatives. I've taken one example, but essentially you can see over a 6-month period, they are able to complete both the training, the embedding, get feedback, improve the tool, whatever helps it stick, basically. So yeah, so I just thought I'll put it on a slide. It's a busy slide, but from and I'll move around, I'm sorry. From a metric stream point of view, this was one of the key ones. Month 1, month 2, based on the pilot, the tool might not be doing exactly what they want it to do. For example, we did some analysis. There were 10 clicks to do a self-assessment in the tool. By the time we were in month 6, there were 3 clicks. All they needed to do is look at the controls, see what it needed in terms of the 5 Ws, how the evidence needed to be stored, click, say it is assessed, is it performing effectively or not, evidence, upload to SharePoint, give the link into SharePoint. They were very particular about the privacy element. So give the link into SharePoint and then click. So 1 control done. Similarly, 10 controls, you complete the assessment for a monthly piece in basically half an hour, 45 minutes. So that's the kind of efficiency they were trying to get to. And once they templated that for one initiative, they basically rolled out multiple initiatives based on that same 3-click template. The way I look at it is, it's just 3 clicks. Doesn't matter what control you're going to use. It could be a financial control. It could be a health and safety and security control. You know what that control is about when you look at the 5 Ws, how the evidence, etc. So the tool element is simplified to such an extent that you can then keep using it across multiple initiatives. So I'll take a pause, see if you have any questions as we go along. Happy to take that with each slide as well. Yeah? All right. And when I said one initiative worked like that, this also meant there were multiple initiatives going on in parallel. I think some of our colleagues here from ICF talk about this a lot. Success by objective. So each initiative, the previous slide talked about one of the initiatives, so Rollout 1, Wave 2, Wave 3, you had multiple initiatives going on. So enterprise risk as a rollout across markets, that was one of the waves. Similarly, compliance and assurance reviews for second line, that was one of the waves. So you had different levels of readiness within each piece, the number of users who are going to use the tool, what the breadth or number of users that needed to use the tool and what they needed to do. So you had different initiatives at different stages of readiness. And what that meant is each of these went on in parallel. So you had initiative 1, which was perhaps a self-assessment, which had the template already defined. You had rollout wave 1, wave 2, wave 3 over months. You had initiative 2, which perhaps didn't have a clear fit with what was there in the tool. You probably needed something which needed to be built. So they they had one of those products built from scratch. So there was a build and configuration and an extended piece of UAT and so on, which also meant it took longer in terms of time frame. And then, of course, you had Initiative 3, the risk assessment, where although it is not as templatized as the self-assessment piece, you're looking to roll it out to the same number of markets for a lesser user base. So it meant you needed to do a pilot with, let's say, 3 or 4 markets, get the feedback, and then go into that phase. So this is just a snapshot of how a typical 6-month, 8-month period looked like. And yeah, so that each initiative then within itself talked about across months. Yeah. And how did this start? So they did a workshop early on, and they did a few of them. I wouldn't say just one. What does good engagement look like? Now, when I say good engagement, is it at the beginning of the journey? Is it in the middle? Is it post go live after being using the tool? What do you want to get from the tool, and so on? So they clearly ask the users themselves, the key stakeholders, the country business risk and compliance managers, control owners, control assessors, what do you think this journey should look like? And I have a few slides which talk about what that feedback looked like and how that kind of defined how this engagement journey looks like. So what are your communication needs? How regularly do you want to hear from us? If there are enhancements in the tool, right from a technical piece to if you have questions, how do you reach out to us? What does that support model look like? How do you get to know what's going to come up in the next 2 months, next 3 months, horizon, and so on? So they did an assessment of some of those needs, and some of those needs also included a very simplified user experience. I talked about the number of clicks, for example. That was one of the key feedback. I don't want to have too many clicks to be able to just say I'm compliant. They had a day job. They needed to do this on a monthly basis. So time to value was very important. Language needs, we are talking about 20 odd languages across 30 odd countries. Some of those people, the store managers, the unit managers, not very conversant with English. So you needed that language support. You couldn't drive this initiative with just English across stores. So we used a tool to be able to do the translation real time on screen. There are many vendors, and I'll also explain how that works. In-app training, I think Simon talked about it earlier today in one of the sessions. There is a tool called Adopt that they used at M&G. The same tool was used also at this customer. Essentially, what it allows you to do is have a layer almost on top of metric stream. So if you are on a self-assessment screen, it basically points you to say, look, you have a help to say what this particular field is, how it is supposed to be read and used. It also allows you to then have a video in the screen. It could be a training snippet video. It could be an instruction guide. It basically allows or gives the end user everything they need on that one screen instead of having to go to SharePoint, look up the video, come back here, and so on. So some great experiences from that effort. So, and then, of course, best practices. What have the pilot countries told us? If it has worked for 5 countries which are high in revenue, high in user base, and so on, why can't it work for you? So some of those conversations also were enabled because we had done it with a pilot which got us those feedback from their peers in other markets. And of course, identifying who's the key stakeholders. There were country BRC leaders. There were CEOs of each market within each of those markets. We had change leaders, people who have been in the firm for a long time, want things to change, want to see the reporting insight, their own reasons to see it change and get them that value. Then there were super users, slightly technical and technically savvy, a little more inclined to understand new things, how reports work, analysis, insights, and so on. So we identified together with the team, to be fair, it was almost, I think, 10 members at its peak who worked across different areas. I worked in the technical space, but I also know there were people who were change and communication experts. people who were rollout experts, rollout leads, and so on. So it was a fairly effective, in that way, a team. But to add to that, you had the center of expertise from within the organization. You had a compliance center of expertise for the self-assessments piece. You had a risk center of expertise for the enterprise risk piece. So they collaborated in terms of the libraries, the number of changes, what needs to go, because there were some common elements. Now, if you are going to simplify it in one part of the tool to just have 3 clicks, you can't tell the same user, for risk assessments, you'll need to take 10 clicks. So you need to have some balance. So they collaborated really well. Initially, it was a bit of a struggle. The pilots, we got that feedback. So we quickly changed course. I think that also resonates with what Simon said earlier today. So yeah, so the engagement forums, how to engage with these champions, if I can call them, that whole box. And what I just mentioned, how does that journey look like? I think visibility, and I'm not sure if many people talked about it in the last few sessions, visibility of what is coming up, I think, is one of the key items. That's the takeaway I got. How is this going to affect me? What am I going to get from this? Yes, but also what it means in the next X months. 6-month horizon, 3-month horizon, something to allow them to understand where is this journey going. And maybe next year they don't need to do as much Excel reporting at the end of the year. Things like those. So we had materials which helped kind of document how those benefits look like. Training and awareness sessions. Some markets were slower than others. We did additional sessions based on a need. Drop-in sessions, we had pretty much every fortnight a session where people could just walk in. The invites were in the calendar. People could just walk in. I have a question about this particular assessment which I'm not able to complete. So you got that kind of input from them to see what we needed to change in terms of, is it a little more complex than it needs to be, but also it gave them an avenue rather than a formal mechanism using Jira or something. It had a personal touch, I felt. So some very good inputs from there. So and then, of course, the post-go live drop-ins. It didn't need to be that, I know Mia and others also sometimes feel this. At the end of metric streams involvement, it's not like we are going by. That's it. There is an element of extending. There is an element. We understand there are people still getting used to the tool. It takes a bit of time for them to get to make this a part of their daily routine. So if that is needed, then it can extend. It can go beyond. So post go live drop-ins, documenting FAQs, identifying trends from tickets that have been logged, addressing that in the FAQs, updating those documentation, helping them easily find those pieces, seeing if there is a trend across markets that they are struggling with, using that as input to again keep improving on the documentation piece. And yeah, so one of the workshops, some of the workshops that we did, simple question using tools like Menti, what will good engagement look like? I think some are really insightful, and these are early stages, yeah. So you can understand they had like almost a broad canvas of what they wanted to achieve. Users using the system as expected. We have a vision. Is that exactly how the users are looking to use it? There should be some benefit. I'm spending time. It shouldn't be one more way of documenting what I've already put in using Excel or whatever other tool I'm using currently. Accurate reporting, storage of evidence, third line asking me questions. I can just point them to a location. All the data is there in metric stream. They are also using metric stream. They have access to that. So that whole platform narrative coming in there. So, and knowledge and best practice sharing between countries. Some markets are more mature. Some markets take a little longer. They are new in the journey within the firm and also in terms of experience within their own teams. If country A has done it really well, how do I kind of almost get that learning from a tool perspective, from a methodology perspective between countries? So some of this basically defined how our engagement journey is going to be. What can we do to encourage users to engage? I think some of it was already mentioned in some of the sessions earlier. We actually did a video with the CEO of the firm addressing them, saying how important it is from some of their objectives. They call them top 10 jobs. They define their 10 jobs for each year. Now, the CEO basically addressed the entire firm saying, look, there is a reason we are trying to do this. And I mean, the COVID pandemic also helped get that message across. We need our stores back open. This will allow us to do that, give us some predictability and so on. So that was one of the reasons or the ways that we tried to engage. Of course, a clear support model, just the assurance that we are not going to just leave after we are done with the rollout. Communication channel, I think some of them were also mentioned in some of the other sessions. User videos, a typical day in the life of, and just showing a 5-minute video of an assessor in a unit doing a self-assessment with the number of clicks that he has to take. And then, of course, feedback loop. So to the point that earlier was made, the first line talking about what works for them and not works for them, doesn't work for them, and how we need to change things when we are trying to do this rollout across other markets coming up. What are their own ambitions? If a market is trying to grow at an exponential pace, what are they trying to achieve within the next X months? Having those conversations with the key stakeholders, understanding that, and then using that as a definition of how the rollout journey looks like. If a market needs to be accelerated a little earlier into the rollout journey, or needs to stay back, or be a little later in the journey, all of those conversations helped. And of course, the carrot and stick part that also was alluded to earlier today. It was a part of their MBOs, incentivization programs for a unit manager to do this. And then, of course, the stick, talk to their managers. So both were used in each of these markets. Yeah, so a typical training deck, and I wanted to put this out here because I think this is key. Typically, we focus on this, the tool training. We did a couple of different things in this engagement. We first started with what are we trying to achieve here, the end goal. We also talked about risks. Some of these are business users who really didn't have a great understanding of risks, controls, how it links to the objectives, and so on. So we did almost a module 1, which focused on the first 4 blocks, and then we focused on 5 and 6 is a separate module. The first 4 elements in module 1 was addressed more from a process point of view, from their own country leadership and so on, which helped embed that knowledge. And we gave it time to sink in. We did it perhaps almost between 1 and 2 weeks later that we did module 2. And module 2 was totally tool focused. It had a demo, it had a breakout room. One of the things that we realized early on was just doing a passive demo, showing them how it's going to work, and just letting them be didn't work. So we did breakout rooms. Teams allows you to do that. You can break people out into separate rooms, give them an activity, activity 1, activity 2, come back with the results, give them 2 weeks to try it out on their own, and then that's when the go live happens for that market. So it helped, like I was saying, it helped that we learned from each experience, each month, each market, and then kept adding to what we were doing. We were also conscious that it doesn't go overboard and kind of almost confuse them. But yeah, so some of those elements and learnings from there. Yeah, and I think in terms of ongoing engagement, I think one of the key items was sharing success stories. If it has worked in a particular initiative, the firm is enjoying that reporting and the ability to share it with regulators, saying anti-bribery and corruption, we are compliant with these controls. Health, safety, and security, which is one of their founders' key items of focus, showing it to the board, using that to then share it across markets. I think sharing those success stories was very key. It helped keep that engagement and keep that energy going. Insights in terms of metrics, how many users, what have they clicked, what have they been struggling with. A lot of that is something that metric stream can give you. What has the person been trying to do? Has they missed adding an evidence element? Are they pointing to a wrong SharePoint? All of that is possible to achieve through a tool like Metric Stream. So we kept feeding it back to the business, which meant they strengthened their process, and the next market, the next initiative, it helped improve this. So yeah, and throughout this journey, we kept identifying from each market almost 2 or 3 people who we could depend on as change leaders, super users, almost an L1, level 1 point of support. So what that meant was any user queries, how do I do this? Am I doing it right? Am I doing it incorrectly? Those questions went there first, then it went to an L2, and then to an L3, which I think I'll mention in the next slide. Yeah, so you have your group risk and compliance leads who got those content queries. What does this mean in the RCW? How do I store the evidence? How do I collect the evidence? Things like that. Local managers, heads of risk and compliance kept addressing them in their monthly forums. And then, of course, the digital tool SMEs. And this was almost a journey I was mentioning to somebody. In the initial stages, Metric Stream was contracted to do this. We don't offer this as a standard element in our contracts, but we also tend to do an L2 level of support where we give the technical support to be able to help you deal with just the post go live. And the intention is we don't want to make this a standard part of our package. We want it to slowly, over a period of time, maybe 3 months, 6 months, transition to your own L2 teams. There could be a help desk and so on. So they take over, they learn as a part of working with us. So they get that knowledge and insight, and then they start taking over completely. So yeah, and then of course the technical issues was with Metric Stream. That's a part of the standard order. So we use Jira and support portal to be able to support that. Yeah. Yeah, and I think the diagram talks about 3 different roles, and we call it train the trainer. However, in a few markets, you saw the same person adopting all 3 roles. It's not unusual at all. We saw 2, 3 people perhaps adopting each of these roles. I think one of the key elements was if they have all the information that they need, they are able to then engage with the people, the control assessors, the control owners, the risk owners, to be able to actually complete the assessments on time. Insights on what is the coverage, what is the element of completeness on time, is it done correctly, accurately, is there an improvement over a period of time? Those kind of insights help them have that message over to their local stakeholders and then keep improving as we went along. So I know we started a bit late, and I know we are short of time also, I realize that, but happy to take any quick questions, and also, of course, I'm available. I'm part of the Metric Stream customer success team. Happy to take any questions off this floor. Right? Thank you. Thank you then. Take care.